Hello, I'm Sue Ellen Cook of Sue Ellen Sadie Photography, where reality gets invented. Welcome to this short video about the story behind one of my more popular images, the Tree Museum. At the 2019 Australian Institute of Professional Photography Awards, I was awarded a gold for this image I captioned, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone," a line from Joni Mitchell's famous song Big Yellow Taxi. I'm sure you all heard of it. I want to tell you a little bit about the inspiration and the journey that this image took to arrive at where it is now. Joni Mitchell's most recognised song was written in 1970. Joni introduced the song this way, and this is a quote. "2 weekends ago, I went to Hawaii. It was my first time there, and I was only there for 2 days, which was a kind of a bummer. I wish I could have really seen more of the island, and I arrived there at 11 o'clock at night, and the next morning I ran to the window, threw back the curtains, and sure enough, there it was, paradise. You know, the green, lush hills, old Sugarloaf Mountain, white birds flying low, minor birds all over the place, and right in the middle of it all was a big parking lot. So I wrote this little rock and roll song to commemorate the occasion. It's called Big Yellow Taxi, or alternatively, They Paved Paradise and Put in a Parking Lot. The song has been recorded by 459 other artists. You can read more about it on her website. Of course, in the early 70s, I was at high school and very much aware of the growing protest movements about environmental destruction, the Vietnam War, and also Woodstock happened. These were heady years for music and that produced some of the best lyrics. Maybe I'm biased, but I loved it, and I find a lot of inspiration from those songs of that era. Big Yellow Taxi's always resonated with me and continued to resonate as I studied the impact of human-induced climate change on our fragile planet. This was during my PhD years. My initial ideas and inspiration for this image came way back in early 2013, only a year or so after I started my Photography of the Imagination journey. So it's been a long time in development. And initially I thought I'd show a building with trees and a big yellow taxi reflected in the glass windows, but I could never quite find the right building. It was impossible for me at that time to create the building in Photoshop, the one that I had in my imagination anyway. So I came close on a visit to the famous artist Brett Whiteley's studio in Surrey Hills in Sydney in Australia. But somehow the building itself was too modern and there was just too much glass. And I wasn't sure how I was going to put the trees inside anyway. It was a bit beyond me at the time. And then I thought about using an old building with individual trees in each window, but it still wasn't sitting right with what I was imagining. It was all too literal. I wanted to make people looking at it think more about what the image meant to them and what the whole concept had meant to Joni when she wrote the song. Plus, where was I going to get a photograph of an old style yellow taxi? Only in New York City, but that was a few years of waiting before I got there. And even then, they were all too modern. You can't find an old-fashioned one anymore. It wasn't until a trip to the iconic Tasmanian location Cradle Mountain for what's known as Fagus Week, and that's a reference to Tasmania's only beautiful deciduous tree, Nothofagus Cunninghami, in April 2019, that most of the photographs actually used in the final image were taken. I came home all excited and re-photographed all the bottles I wanted to use from my collection of old and not so old bottles. I'd shot the tabletop Formica surface in my cabin at Cradle Mountain while at Fagus Week, which made the perfect background wall. And then I added each individual Old Masters painting from visits to major galleries across the USA, the National Gallery in Canberra, the New South Wales Art Gallery and the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery. The shelf I photographed in my own home and is made from Tasmanian myrtle timber, Nothofagus Cunninghami. The image is a series of metaphors really, and definitely intended to be surreal. The light coming through the high window just out of sight casts this old-worldly warm glow over the background wall, highlighting the dusty, musty impression I have of old art galleries. I can imagine it feels like that we've snuck in there when nobody's about, in the night or after hours, been locked in when they've shut the doors. In contrast, each of the bottles seems to have its own mysterious and unseen light source, like some futuristic laboratory where living things are kept in preserving jars with just the right conditions in which to survive. The light changes subtly from left to right. It's hardly noticeable, bottle to bottle, as diverse lush rainforest gives way to the loss of species diversity forest clearing, the impact of human activities, and lastly, the final blow, the death of a species. Death of all that we have left, gone forever. Each bottle then is a metaphor for what seems like a fast train to inevitable extinction, and the subtle changes between each bottle sort of represent how it is, in that we live our life and don't realise that these things are happening around us. I hope that the image makes everyone reflect on the beauty and the values we're putting at risk with our greed and desire for more and more material things. It's interesting that the COVID-19 virus has changed that a bit, and we're all got to make use of what we have on hand. Nature is our lifeblood. If this image can make you think about your footprint and demands on this fragile planet and inspire you to make just one change to support its survival, then it's not in vain. I truly hope that this metaphor image does not turn into a prophetic one. Make a difference now. Do what you can. The image consists of 43 individual images that I've photographed personally. I only ever use my own photographs, and there are 138 layers in the Photoshop file that is 14.6 gigabytes in size. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to the backstory of this whimsical image. Go look up the lyrics and look up the song on YouTube and play it again for old time's sake. Thank you for listening. Bye.